of March 2014, somewhere over the China Sea, Malaysia Airlines flight mh370 with 239 people aboard disappeared from the radar screens. On that day began the greatest mystery in world aviation history. 5 years later, despite the mobilization of hundreds of experts from around the world, the plane has never been found, and this extraordinary enigma has never been solved. Malaysia Airlines submitted its official inquiry report in July 2018. This very controversial document concludes that flight mh370 was hijacked without any claim of responsibility. Nevertheless, 5 years after the disappearance of this plane, new hypotheses are emerging. Was dangerous merchandise being carried in the hold?
Lithium batteries have been a major subject because they are so difficult to control.
Did suspicious passengers board the plane? Could a military blunder in the China Sea have been the cause of the plane's disappearance? What should we make of the curious adventurer who miraculously finds pieces of the plane's debris every time he's with a television film crew? In this drama, every detail raises questions, including the part of the wing of the Boeing 777, the flaperon, that was found 3 years ago on Reunion Island, and that some experts doubt the identification. 5 years after the disappearance of flight mh370, the lack of answers prolongs each day the pain of the victims' families. The result is that they have lost all confidence in the authorities and in the validity of their entire investigation.
Where did it go? Where did it end? And where are all the people?
And what if this incredible enigma is the biggest lie in aviation history?
On sait la vérité et on ne dit pas la vérité. Et pourquoi? C'est une sale histoire.
Let's begin our counter-investigation by looking at the chronology of events. On March the 8th, 2014 at 0:42 a.m., flight mh370 took off from the Malaysian capital Kuala Lumpur, bound for Beijing. The flight was to last 6.5 hours. With 49 tons of kerosene, the aircraft had an autonomy of 7.5 hours, an hour longer than the estimated flight time. At boarding, 227 passengers and 12 crew members were counted, representing 14 different nationalities. The start of the flight went without a hitch. Flight mh370 reached, as usual, its cruising altitude of 10,000 meters. At 1:07 a.m., 26 minutes after takeoff, the plane was picked up as normal by the Agari navigational waypoint, a stage on flight mh370's scheduled flight plan. 12 minutes later, the aircraft left Malaysian airspace and was on the point of entering Vietnamese airspace. Following the usual procedure, a radio exchange terminated communication with Malaysia. This was the last audible message sent by mh370. The plane never did make contact with the Vietnamese controllers. Another astonishing fact. 1 minute after that last message, all the plane's means of identification and communication closed down. mh370 became a ghost plane. Initially, Vietnamese air traffic control was unconcerned by the plane's silence. It was only after 20 minutes that they alerted their Malaysian colleagues. At 6:30 a.m., the plane's scheduled landing time in Beijing, mh370 still wasn't announced on the arrivals boards. Despite the lack of information, the families understood something had happened.
I heard about the confirmation that mh370 was lost on an internet search, found a CNN story.
当时是我外甥给我发的微信，然后知道了以后呢，我当天订的机票。
I finally heard from them at like 2:30 that afternoon, so I had been able to confirm just through the news what seemed to be multiple sources of confirmation that the flight was missing.
At 7:30 a.m., the Malaysian authorities officially announced the plane's disappearance.
Malaysia Airlines confirmed that this flight mh370 lost contact with Subang Air Traffic Control at 2:40 a.m.
After that first dramatic announcement, a veritable nightmare began for the families. The search in the China Sea found nothing. Information and denials followed in quick succession. Malaysia Airlines public relations made error upon error, including the incredible announcement that, after suffering a temporary communications failure, mh370 had been picked up by military radars, turning back towards Kuala Lumpur.
There is a possibility the aircraft did might have turned back.
After turning around, the plane had, so the airline announced, returned to Malaysian airspace before crashing into the Malacca Straits. That is where the trace picked up by Malaysian military radar came to an end. But then the satellites of a British company called Inmarsat followed the rest of flight mh370's trajectory. The plane had, said the company, continued its flight as far as the Indian Ocean, where it crashed in the middle of nowhere. Following the release of this new information, the search was abandoned in the China Sea and concentrated in the Indian Ocean. But the search zone there was immense. Despite the considerable means invested in them, the investigations remained fruitless. Today, 5 years after the start of the search and the spending of some 130 million euros, no trace of flight mh370 has been found at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. What happened on March 8, 2014, just before 20 past 1 in the morning, 6 miles off the ground? For the aeronautics experts, there are 3 hypotheses. The first, a fire on board. Several airplanes have fallen victim to this sort of disaster. But according to the specialists, if a fire breaks out on an aircraft, it can only continue flying for 30 or 40 minutes. In the case of mh370, this hypothesis doesn't stand up because according to the Inmarsat data, the plane was piloted for 7 hours after the communications shut down. Second possibility, a hijacking. This is the hypothesis retained by the official inquiry. The plane's trajectory could be explained by the simple fact that it was still under control. That is how the plane managed to turn around and fly towards the Malacca Straits. Despite the absence of any hijacker's demand, the inquiry concluded that a hijacking had taken place. But why should we believe that mh370 was hijacked when no one has ever claimed responsibility? Third and last possibility, the pilot or the co-pilot committed suicide. The investigators have examined every detail of their private lives. So what really happened? And what if none of these leads were the right one? And could this incredible story have no other goal than to mask a series of errors? And would it be possible to imagine the most incredible mystery in aviation history was in fact just one big lie? To try to understand the incomprehensible, let's go point by point through the incoherences of the official report.
Bon, globalement, dans cet avion, tout ce qu'on tire est bizarre. Toute ficelle qu'on tire, on trouve qu'il y a quelque chose de bizarre.
We are looking at every angle. We are looking at every aspect.
First, the passengers. Remember that the 12 crew members welcomed on board 227 passengers of 14 different nationalities, including a majority of Chinese nationals. The investigators therefore examined the profiles of 239 people.
The investment team is now, as we speak, is going through all the records, going through all the videos footage.
Could a commando have hijacked the plane?
Les passagers, on a commencé par nous dire tout de suite, il y a 2 Iraniens qui ont des faux passeports.
In the international situation of that time, 2 Iranians traveling with fake passports on a plane that disappeared couldn't be ignored. Despite these troubling elements, on the very next day, Interpol cleared up any doubt.
J'ai trouvé surtout que les 24 heures étaient un temps extrêmement court pour nous dire il n'y a pas de problème avec les Iraniens.
According to the Interpol inquiry, The two Iranians were nothing but regular citizens who wished simply to emigrate to Europe. To confuse the authorities, they chose a Kuala Lumpur-Beijing flight. There, they were going to take another flight to Germany.
Enfin, je trouve ça quand même assez bizarre de passer par Pékin pour aller en Allemagne.
A surprising itinerary. Go via a country with surveillance as tight as China's when you want to go unnoticed with a fake passport. It might seem like a peculiar idea. The other thing is that the Iranians managed to get through the border controls with fake passports, which raises the question of security at Kuala Lumpur airport. But the report concluded in the end that none of the passengers were responsible for the hijacking. So who would have hijacked flight mh370? The pilots?
The Malaysian authorities have refocused their investigation into the crew.
Les pilotes et copilotes, on en a